Recurring transactions transform my entire workflow, enabling me to automate tasks, create templates, and work more efficiently in QuickBooks. Let's start with a quick example of creating recurring transactions to pay off an expense such as rent. To create a recurring transaction, head over to the gear icon and select recurring transactions. You'll get a list of all of the recurring transactions that you have set up till now in QuickBooks, but you also have the option to create a new recurring transaction. We'll select new, and because we are going to create an expense, we'll select that as the transaction type and then select OK. This is the recurring transaction template, and we'll start off by giving it a name. In transaction type, I have three options: scheduled, reminder, and unscheduled. If the transaction details are fixed and the date or period in which they occur are also fixed, then you can select scheduled and QuickBooks will automate the entries. If, however, the transaction details aren't fixed, then you can create a reminder. QuickBooks will remind you to create this transaction. You can then update the details within this transaction and create it accordingly. And finally, you have the unscheduled option, which enables you to quickly create templates and then use those templates to create transactions whenever you need. This can be helpful for creating estimates or other sales forms that you regularly need to create and send to customers. Because this transaction will occur monthly, I'm going to select scheduled. In pay, I'm going to select equipment rental. I can set the interval at which this transaction will be automatically created. I can select monthly in this case, and then I want it to occur on first day of each month. In the start date, I'll select 2nd of October. Starting from November 1st, QuickBooks will start creating these transactions. I can also set up the transactions from reoccurring after a certain date or after a certain number of occurrences. If I leave this at none, QuickBooks will indefinitely create these transactions. If I select by, then I can select the date by which these recurring transactions should end. And if I select after, then I can select the number of occurrences for this transaction. So if I enter 6 here, then after 6 occurrences, QuickBooks won't create this transaction for me. I'll leave this at 6 and move to the payment method. I'll select cash. Now you can see that rest of the options are very similar to that which appear in an expense form or an invoice or sales receipt. I'll select equipment rental account, and this is $1,000 per month. I can enter a memo, attach any relevant documents or receipts, and then select Save Template. I have the rent expense template here. It is scheduled. It will occur every month, and the next date that it will occur is the 1st of November. The amount for the transaction will be $1,000. Because I've scheduled this transaction, QuickBooks will automatically post the transaction for me, and I'll be able to view that transaction after it has been posted. But let's move to the next example. This time I'm going to create a sales receipt and make it a scheduled transaction. Back in QuickBooks, I'll again select new, and in the transaction type, I'll select sales receipt. Let's go with the example that the customer has approved automatic payment of a certain sum. And at the end of each month, we receive the payment and we want QuickBooks to send the sales receipt to this customer. This is a repetitive task, very much something that you'd want to automate. I'll enter the template name. I'll leave scheduled as the template type. I don't want to create it in advance, but I have that option as well. I'll select the customer for whom I'm creating the sales receipt. I'll choose that QuickBooks automatically send the sales receipt to the customer when it is created, and I'll add the sales receipt to the print queue with the print later option. In interval, I'm going to select monthly, but this time I want it to go on the last Monday of each month. The start date will be the 1st of November and the end date will be by. And because let's say the customer has paid me for 3 months, the last sales receipt will actually go on the 29th of January 2024. I'll enter rest of the details for this and I'll save the template. In the list, I have the designed subscription template. It has been scheduled. The transaction type is sales receipt. The interval is every month, and the next date that it will be created on is 27th November 2023. If I want to edit the details, I can select the edit option, make the required changes, and then save the template. I can also click on the drop down option in the action column and duplicate this template if I want to create a new template on the basis of the duplicate one. Let's go with that. And this is the second plan. This one is for Diego Rodriguez. QuickBooks alerts me that this is a copy of a template for sales receipt. I'll enter in rest of the details and I'll save this template as well. I have created a new template on the basis of an older one that I created. And this simplifies the process of creating multiple templates in QuickBooks Online so that if I have multiple customers and I want to automate the transactions for them, then I can do that here. But for certain transactions, while the frequency may be fixed, the details, the item type, the items itself, the quantity of the items may vary. And in this case, I have the option to set up reminders so that QuickBooks will remind me to create this transaction. I'll then be able to update the transaction information and then create the transaction accordingly. Think of this as somewhat less of an automation and more of a reminder. I'll head back to QuickBooks Online and then I'll select new. And in the transaction type, this time I'm going to create an invoice. I'll enter the template name. I'll select the type as reminder. I'll choose QuickBooks to remind me 2 days before the transaction date. I'll select the customer as school course. I can choose the interval as weekly and I want it to occur every 2 weeks, and that is on Monday. The start date would be the 2nd of October and this will occur 10 times and then end. The terms for the invoice are net 30. Customer will have to pay the amount within 30 days. I'll select the product. I'll leave the quantity as 1, but when QuickBooks reminds me to create this template, I'll be able to update the quantity and then create the invoice on the basis of the updated quantity. I'll enter rest of the details and then click on Save Template. I have the pump invoice reminder. The template type is a reminder. The transaction type is an invoice. Interval is every 2 weeks on Monday. The next date for the reminder for the transaction is 9th of October 2023. But sometimes both the frequency and the details for a transaction are variable. In this case, the best thing that you can do is to create a template and manually convert it into a transaction to record the details more efficiently. For this case, I'll create a recurring estimate that I send to my customer for approval before I start a job. I'll head over to the new option. In the transaction type, I'll select estimate. Select OK. I'll enter in a name for the template. In the type, I'll select unscheduled. QuickBooks alerts me that unscheduled transactions don't have timetables. You can use them as needed from the recurring transactions list. Basically, they are templates. You can use them and create transaction whenever you need them. In the customer, I'll select any one of the customers. Later, I can change the customer and the details accordingly because I want to use this template for multiple customers in my company 5. I'll select the products and services, and whenever I convert this template into a transaction, I can add more items, update the quantity. For now, I'll just save this template. I'll go back to the recurring transactions list. The estimate template here is the odd one out because it has the use option instead of the edit option. But I can edit the details for this as well. I want to convert this template into a transaction. I can simply click on use and QuickBooks will create a new transaction using that template. I have all of the details already filled in. I can make additional changes and save and close. I've created the estimate and sent it to the customer, and it was that easy. Before I end this video, I'll take you through a complex transaction that you can use recurring transactions for. In this case, we are going to create adjusting entries. Let's just say I've paid the internet bill for the next 3 months. I'll create an expense. I'll select the vendor, the account that I've made the payment through, the payment method. In category, I'm going to select prepaid expenses. I'll fill in all of the required details and then select save and close. I've recorded a prepaid expense. At the end of each month, I want to recognize the expense on internet and transfer the amount from the prepaid expense account. It is actually an asset account. To automate this task, I'm going to select new, and this time I'll select journal entry and select OK. Enter in a template name. Then select the type as scheduled. The interval is going to be monthly and on the last Monday of each month. The start date is the 2nd of October and it will end after 3 occurrences. I'll debit the internet expense account, for which I'll have to create a new account at this point. I'll select expenses as the account type. I'll enter the account name in detail type. I can select communication and I'll save and close. The amount will be $100. I'm going to select the prepaid expense account because I'm transferring the amount from this account into this account to recognize the expense for the internet. I'll save this template. This template, which is scheduled, will create a transaction journal entry every month on the last Monday of that that month. The next day for this transaction will be 30th of October 2023. I can also choose edit to view the transaction details. This journal entry is going to increase internet expense by $100 and decrease the amount in prepaid expenses by $100. I don't want to make any changes. I'll just close this. If I select the drop down option in the action column, I have more options available to me. The use option enables me to create a transaction based on this template. The duplicate option once again lets me create a new template on the basis of the current one. I can pause the reoccurrence of this transaction if I want to. I can skip the next date for this transaction and I can even delete this reoccurring transaction. I'll just skip the next date, which is the 30th of October, and I'm going to use this and create one just right now. I'll select the date as the 2nd of October and save this transaction, and I can look at the transaction journal where I can see that the internet expense account has been increased by $100, whereas the prepaid expense account has been decreased by $100. I can unequivocally say that recurring transactions are a great way to automate a lot of manual tasks. However, you need to be cautious. If you have set up bank feeds and bank rules, then you need to make sure that you don't create recurring transactions for the transactions that will be imported directly from the bank feed, and make sure to review the list of recurring transactions at the end of each month so that you can easily remove all of the transactions related to jobs that have been either paused or cancelled. And if you want to learn more about bank feeds and bank rules and how they interact with recurring transactions, then click on the video link here.